Hey, what's up? Welcome back to part 14 of clearbnb, where we're rebuilding a short-term vacation rental marketplace using Tailwind UI, Rails. We're using Stripe Checkout, Stripe Connect. So we're building out a platform for, this short-term rental marketplace. Today, what we're going to do is work on our application UI. We're using one of these stacked layouts that's from Tailwind UI, like the paid version of Tailwind UI. And they have this sort of like button on the right where you can click on it and view your profile. But what we have right now doesn't have any of that. So if I just say like bin Rails server, then we've kind of just been hacking around with just using some menu items here. And then we actually hid the item for doing the drop-down list. And we said we're going to save it for later. And this is the episode where we're going to add it. So if you look at the HTML, for the code that they give you, right underneath the profile dropdown, there is a div that has a button, and that button is the thing that has like the face of, I think it's Tim Cook, I don't know, but and then underneath that we have an actual dropdown menu, and it says here's the different states that you want to use, like when you're entering, and then when you have like the from and to as you're going to like open the menu, and then you have leaving. This is what you want to do as you're like closing the menu. And in the HTML version here, this does say it requires JS. If you look at like the React versions, there are transition elements that are part of headless UI. And those transition elements look something like this. So it's a transition component that takes in props, and those props have like your enter, from, to, leave, from, to. And when we're working with HTML, or in our case, HTML ERB directly, we don't have like these nice things. And so I was digging around a little bit and looking, and I found this blog post by Mike McCall, really great blog post. And there was an exciting thing to learn that Mike has built an NPM module called EL transition, or element transition, or the transition in Espanol, I don't know. So the whole purpose of the package is to handle the enter and leave transition when you're using classes or attributes. And it says it's similar to implementations you'll find in Vue.js and Alpine.js. But what I think is really cool is you can sort of take some data attributes, apply them to the div that you want to have as the dropdown, and we get a similar experience to if we had React or Vue on the front end, but we're using Stimulus. So what we're going to do today is re-show the face. We're going to work on these navigation items to make sure that they are like dark when we're on the right pages. I guess I got to log in here. So that is what the plan is for today. Also, there's a button underneath this little thingy that says log out, and so we've got this white space bar at the top. We're going to add that into the popover so we can actually sign out from the thing. So the first thing we'll do is pretty easy. We'll talk about ApplicationHelper. So inside of our Rails application, we have an ApplicationHelper.rb. Now, oftentimes you'll see these modules created when you're generating controllers. So every controller by default, when you say Rails G controller blah, it gives you a helper, like an associated helper. So in this case, for our when you first generate a Rails app, it's going to give you an application helper, and the methods that you write inside of the application helper, or any of the helpers, are available as methods like that you can use inside of the view. So what I wanted to do was improve this experience here, where like if I'm on the reservations page, it should look like the reservations button is sort of depressed, or that that navigation item is dark, has like the dark background and the brighter white text. And so this is just some CSS classes that we need to apply when that is the current page. So back inside of Rails, what I want to do is just say like navigation items or something. We'll just like create an array of items here. Each of them is going to have some body, and that's going to say like listings, and then an href, I guess, which will be like the listings path. And we want we want to have like, I don't know, not log out, but like maybe my listings can be the host listings path. The other problem that we have right now is like, it's been a couple months since I worked on this. I moved and I broke my ankle, and it's been kind of crazy. The last 2 months have been super crazy, but since I haven't worked on it recently, I don't actually remember what all the routes are. So the only way that I would know that is if I go to the routes.rb file and kind of like scan down this. So we've got listings, we've got reservations, we have the host listings path, and we have the host merchant settings path. So there's a few different things we probably want to add up here, but at least listings, reservations, and it's weird, like sometimes when, what is this? GitHub Copilot just adds like extra lines. I'm like, I just want to complete the current line and then not have to go back and delete the other lines, but whatever. Okay, so this navigation items, this is a step in the right direction. So if we go back to application HTML ERB here and look at our navigation items. So right now what's happening is we're spitting out these two links. So we can say navigation items.each do item. And then for every one of these items, what we want to do is we're going to spit out a link. Now, if we want to keep it simple, we could just like copy and paste this exact link and say like, okay, item href is going to be the thing that we want to print out. But there are Ruby helpers for doing this, so a little bit easier. So we can actually just use a link to tag, and then we'll pass in item, I think it was actually body, and then item href as the two things that we want to do. And if we refresh, now you can see like the listing, like the links are here now. We have listings, reservations, and my listings, but they don't have the same styling. And the styling is going to differ depending on whether or not we're on the, like this is the current page. So what I want to do is actually pass in some class here. Class is going to be like, maybe like navigation class for the items path. And based on the path, we should be able to figure out if we need to use the current CSS or the or like the default CSS. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab these two lines, come back to our helper, and we're going to add a new method here, navigation class, which will take in a path. Now, if it's the current path, so if the current page is path, okay, that was pretty cool. Then we want to use that. Otherwise, we're going to use that, and you'll see where I'm going. Okay, we're just gonna return the string value for the CSS class list that we want to use. You'll also notice that it had current the ARIA current accessibility thing for the current page. We should also do that, so we will. Okay, now if we refresh, right now we see multiple menu items. Several of them are selected, so we'll come back over here. And we want to, let's see, we want to add that ARIA dash. So it's like ARIA dash current is going to be, I guess that's going to be page if, but only if, yeah, we only want that to happen if it's the current page. ARIA, and then here we'll say like get, or like navigation ARIA for item href. The other thing too is that like we could build this link too inside of the helper. It doesn't have to be inside of directly inside of the HTML for the path. And then this is actually going to be the same. Yep. Okay. So GitHub Copilot coming in strong. If we inspect this, then we should see that this tag has, it's close. So it should just be ARIA, yeah, ARIA current. Can I do this? And then we'll just return page. Otherwise, we'll return false. Let's see. Okay, there we go. ARIA current page, and then otherwise the other ones just have false, which I think is what we want. All right, cool. So now we can just remove the other two links that were just dangling down below here, and we have a navigation that has the correct sort of, yeah, the background is marked as expected. Cool. Let's move on to the next step here, which is going to be to recover or like, yeah, renew, bring back, we want to bring back that navigation dropdown. So what we did to hide this was we just added a bunch of hidden properties everywhere. So we hid different parts of this profile dropdown thing. So we'll just remove hidden from a couple of these. And then if we refresh the page, this is what it was before. So we've got like this face that we want, when we click on it, we want it to show this menu. And then when we click again, we want it to hide the menu. And again, this is kind of like the transition that we want to show. So by default, I think we want the menu to be hidden, right? And then when we refresh the page, now we want to add some sort of like click action here. Now, in order to do this, I want to use a stimulus controller so that we can write just a little bit of JavaScript to sort of wire up different buttons on the menu here. So we're going to say Rails G stimulus, and then we're going to call it menu. We're just going to keep it simple and call it menu. And then back inside of application HTML ERB, we have to figure out sort of what is the scope around which we want to apply our menu controller. And I think we have a nav class. We do. Okay. So oftentimes like the nav tag is a very, what is it called? It's like a conventional HTML class or an HTML tag that we'd use to wrap up the navigation items. And so in this case, I think it makes sense to have our data controller be on the nav. So we'll call our data controller menu, or we called our data controller menu. And now what we need to do is wire up actions and targets, actions and targets. So when we click on this profile drop-down button, then we should toggle the drop-down menu. So something like we want to say data-action, and the action here is going to be when we click on this button and click as the default, then we want to call menu toggle menu, or maybe toggle. So there's actually two menus here. If I go to mobile, like the mobile mode, and click on, tap on this thing, this is the other menu. So there's like a mobile menu and a non-mobile menu, and this is like the non-mobile menu. So we actually have like a desktop and a mobile. So I'm going to say when they click on this one, we want to toggle the desktop menu. And this is the desktop menu here. And so we need to say, or we need to create a target. So we're going to say data menu target is desktop menu. And this would be like, or maybe like desktop dropdown. I don't know, like whatever. Okay, so then what we want to do is go, so we've got sort of all the HTML. We've got our data-controller that's going to control the navigation section of our application layout. Then we have an action that says when we click on the face in the menu, it should toggle the desktop menu. Then we have a target, and this is going to be like how we can, how we can target a specific element. So we'll go back to our menu controller here, and we want to add static targets is, I guess this is going to be desktop menu, and then we'll also have like mobile menu. Also, the word menu, after you read it a bunch of times, starts to look super weird. Yeah, we'll log that the menu controller is connected just to make sure that that's working. And then when we say toggle desktop menu, I guess like at the base, we could just toggle the hidden class, but that's not like the ultimate solution because we want to transition. So if we click on this now, hey, look at that. Okay, that totally works. Now if we go to our mobile menu, it's not going to work yet because the mobile menu isn't wired up. So we've got to do basically the same thing. So we're going to say toggle the mobile menu, and we'll change this also to mobile menu. And then we have to find the button that opens the mobile menu, and that's here, the mobile menu button. So we're going to say data menu action. No, data action is menu toggle mobile menu. And the reason we're doing a different toggle is that both the content for the mobile dropdown and for the desktop dropdown are going to show like they're in the HTML on the same page. So like we need separate buttons for toggling the mobile menu and the desktop menu. And yeah, I don't know, it should be fine. So by default, we want that one to be hidden. So if we come back over here, now it should be, if we refresh, it should be hidden. Okay, cool. So then what we want is like when we click on this thing, it shows the mobile menu. So now we have to say data menu target is mobile menu. And if we refresh the page and click on this, now we see the mobile menu. And if we go back over here and refresh the page, when we click on this, we see the desktop menu. Cool. Now let's fix the problem where we've got white space at the top and this logout button. I want it to just be like, okay, you click on this thing and you click on sign out and that should sign you out. So there's, actually, no, before we do that, let's make it transition smoothly. Right now it's just snapping, right? It's snapping into place. There's no animation. So this is where this L transition enters. El transition, it's like the transition in Espanol. I cannot wait to go back to Mexico. I am missing it. It's freezing cold here in New Hampshire. So yeah, Mexico sounds nice right now. All right, so let's add this transition thing. So the first step is we're going to need to npm install ltransition, and that is going to download this npm module. We'll say bin webpack dev server start, and gosh, yeah, it's so much nicer in the latest versions of Rails that do not have this. We'll get to that at some point. We will get to that for sure. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go back to our menu controller, and here we can say import toggle from ltransition. And instead of just explicitly toggling the hidden class, and also, by the way, ltransition does depend on using the class of hidden. So here what we do is we can change this from the class list toggle to just toggle, and we pass in the element. So that should do some fancy stuff for us. So we'll do the same here. Oops. So we'll toggle this. Okay, and then in order for ltransition to work, it needs to know all of these different CSS classes. So we're going to add a bunch of new data dash attributes. And in the documentation for the npm module, and also in this dev.to article, ltransition provides a bunch of these that happen to be exactly the same as what you see recommended from the CSS or the Tailwind UI stuff that you just copy and paste. So for entering, so data transition enter, we're going to have a transition that eases out. The duration is 100, and this the same as that, 100. Same. So all of this is good to go. So now if we come back to our app, refresh the page, and click on it, now you can see it sort of fades in a little bit. It's so much cleaner. Okay, let's look at the docs too for Tailwind CSS transition. I think there's like a transition duration. Okay, so 300, 500, 1000. So let's just make this 1000 just so we can see it a little bit better. So if we click on this, now it really fades in and like slams away. Okay, cool. So there's definitely some animation happening now, which is great. I don't think we had transitions for the mobile menu. Okay. All right, so that's ltransition. It's super easy to just pull it in. You call toggle. You can also explicitly call enter or leave. And I'll link to the dev.to article and to the package in the description of the video. If you give it a run, like, yeah, let me know. I thought it was like very, very simple to use. And I appreciate it when folks contribute those types of things that are so handy. Gosh, that's so handy. Okay. Let's move our logout button over here to a link for sign out. So devise by default requires a delete request to sign out. So if I open config initializers devise and I find sign out, Okay, sign out via delete. Instead of the delete HTTP verb, I'm going to switch it to get. That way I can just make a get request with a link. It'll log me out and everything will be fine, I think. Okay. So then I'm going to restart my server since I'm changing an initializer, which only runs sort of like at start. I think it only runs at start. Then the next thing we can do is go back to our application HTML ERB, and where we see the sign out link in the profile drop-down settings here, we can now say delete user, what is it called? Destroy user, okay. Destroy user session path. And now if I refresh the page and I click on sign out, then I am signed out. The only way I know I'm signed out is because that the white space on top was removed. So let's also add a little wrapper around this sign out button that says if I'm logged in, then show the sign out button. Otherwise, show a sign in button, I think. So let's say that this is going to be the content that we see. Like if there's a user signed in, is that a thing? Device user signed in. Yeah, okay. So if they're signed in, then they see this. Else, they see something else. And we should probably also like make these, the content of these links, helper method navigation item things, but for now we'll just keep it simple, and we'll say that if they're signed out, they're just going to see a link that says like sign in or something. Refresh the page, and now we just see sign in because I'm signed out. So if I say sign in, I'm brought to the sign in page. Wave at cjab.dev, password, click sign in, and now I am signed in. Cool. Now we can also remove this thing at the top so that it's not there anymore. All right, so interesting. Okay, so let's go to our listings view. We've got cabin in the woods, we've got some reservation stuff, we've got my listings. The spacing around a lot of these is kind of messy, but we'll figure that out. We've also got your profile and settings here. Let's go back to our routes and see what else we should be linking out to. I guess merchant settings, what is that? Host/merchant settings. This I think we worked on pretty recently. So this shows us that we have a Stripe account ID and our charges are enabled for our Stripe account. So let's add a link to that. I think we want that probably in the dropdown. So instead of settings, yeah, maybe we can say this is going to be our host merchant settings path. Just keep it simple so that when you click on settings, you're brought to this page. And then otherwise, you are going to be your profile. I don't think is, well, I guess actually we will have to create a profile at some point, but I don't know. We'll do that down the road. Back to routes. We've got host listings, we've got users. Okay, so that's actually pretty close to what we want. So let's actually just remove this your profile thing for now, and we can go and add a link there later. But for now, we've got settings, we've got sign out. When you're logged in, you can see those things. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this. Obviously, we want to change like the icons and some of the colors and things, but I think we can come back and do that at a later date. So yeah, we'll call it there. Yeah, hopefully that was useful in terms of knowing how to wire up your menus as part of your Tailwind UI stacked layouts using Stimulus, controller, and EL transition. Yeah, really appreciate your time and attention. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.